Okay, so welcome everyone to the SCAS, so Society of Canadian Aquatic Sciences webinar that's titled Pictures with Purpose, Photography as a Tool for Science Communication. This is part of our series of webinars that's known as the Aqua series. So my name's Christine Madliger. I'm an assistant professor at Algoma University. I'm in Northern Ontario, and I'm the chair of the webinar committee. I'm also going to introduce Brad Howell, who's a PhD candidate at Trent University. He's a member of the webinar committee. He's co-organized the session with me, and he'll be serving as a co-moderator today. So I want to let everyone know that the webinar is being recorded. This allows us to be able to post them up on our SCAS YouTube channel following the event. So if you're interested in any of the previous webinars that we've hosted, those are also available there. So you can search on YouTube or you can go to the Society website and there's links to all the videos there. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that, we're all coming together virtually, but we're spread physically across Canada and potentially other regions of the world as well. So we want to recognize the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today and ask everyone to just take a moment to consider the territory that they're situated in and their own personal responsibility and processes of reconciliation. And we always like in sort of these group settings, it's nice to consider the ongoing role that our Aquatic Sciences Society has in reconciliation and decolonization and finding ways to try to bridge awareness with action. So today's webinar highlights 4 of the Society's Photography Award winners. So they're going to serve as panelists today. They're going to share their experiences using photography as a tool for science communication, provide us with a little bit of advice on how to enhance the ways we share our research or our other professional work with wide audiences. And then we'll have the opportunity as well to be able to view their award-winning photograph, as well as sort of a larger compilation of their work and hear about some of the challenges and opportunities of engaging in photography in aquatic science spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the baton over to Brad. He's going to give you a little bit more information about how we're going to proceed with the webinar today and the structure of it.
Perfect. So I'm just going to take down the slide here so we can see everybody's faces. Here we are. Okay, so before we start, I just want to give an outline of the general structure of today's webinar. We're going to start by asking the panelists to introduce themselves, and then they're going to share a slideshow of some of their work. We'll follow that by asking them a series of prepared questions, and then we're going to leave about a 10-minute span for audience questions specifically at the end. So we encourage you at the end during that time, you can either raise your hand or you can type it in the chat, and then I'll read it out for you, whatever you're more comfortable with. We're going to conclude the webinar with a final quick answer question for all the panelists. So I'm going to start. I'm going to ask, can you please introduce yourself and your professional role? Let us know how you became interested in photography and how you use it in your research, professional work, or science communication endeavors. And so this is for all of the panelists that we have today.
So Kathryn, we'll start with you.
Great. Well, thanks for organizing this. So my name is Kathryn Peiman. I'm a biologist, trained as kind of a behavioral ecologist through the years. Worked for a nonprofit for about 4 years and currently freelancing on kind of a bunch of different jobs. A lot of them have to do with editing for journals. Other ones have to do with evidence synthesis for the Center for Evidence-Informed Conservation. And one of my jobs is executive director of SCAS. So I actually help develop best practices for kind of all the things you have to do to run the society and help with the conference logistics as well. So that's kind of my current job type roles. As for photography itself, I've always loved doing photography. I've really gotten back into it in the last maybe 5 years or so. I kind of upgraded my gear, decided I was going to, actually dedicate time to learning how to use it and spend more time, actually with the goal of kind of photographing critters outside, basically. I also do a lot of videography, so especially underwater, it's kind of an area that lacks a lot, especially in freshwater. And so, nothing fancy. It's usually just a bunch of GoPros, but I try and actually film what's going on in our streams as well. Videos, of course, show behavior often a lot better than just pictures. And so I kind of do both depending on my goal for the day. I want to share these, so I want to, do it for myself because it's awesome, but I also want other people to be able to see it because, again, especially underwater, people just the number of times I've had people come and say, "What are you doing? What are you looking at?" And I'm like, "Do you not see the fish there?" And they don't have that mental image. They don't even, kind of notice they're there. So I post my videos on YouTube. Sometimes it's just the video, but I'm trying more and more to add the text of what's going on. So making sure that my biological interpretation is accurate, which actually leads me often to do research to make sure I'm actually describing things correctly. So I get to learn more as well. For my pictures, I tend to post them to an Instagram account. So I also share them that way. And then one of the things I also did to try and kind of reach a different audience is that I made self-published 3 books on biology using my own photos to kind of, which was its own interesting kind of way to communicate science to a general audience, which, there's a lot that goes into how and in what format you try and make books. But I made the attempt. It was a lot of work, but I'm very happy I at least tried to do it. And so that's kind of my current ways to share the photographs that I take.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, hi everyone. Chris Perrin. I'm a principal with a small consulting firm in Vancouver called Limnotech. We've been around since the mid 1980s, and the work that I particularly contribute to is in the biogeochemical end of things. So I work in flowing water systems as well as lakes and reservoirs, and have touched a little bit in systems modeling of coastal ocean systems as well. So I started taking photographs, I believe it was when I was about 19 years old, got my first camera, and I was working in the mining sector as a student during summer times. This is when I was doing my undergrad. And at that time, working in the bush, I thought, oh boy, I got to get some photos of where I'm going. And the whole idea here was really just to document where I was and to capture some of the images of what I was doing. And from that point on, I've been using photography in my professional role, both in terms of managing projects and describing the complex interactions that we often see in many of the projects that we're involved in, which does span several different layers of aquatic systems. So I found that the use of photography is particularly valuable in terms of the communication of complex findings. And this is true for both communicating to fellow scientists and also the general public. And more importantly, because my company has clients who are industry-based, I've really found it useful and valuable to communicate in photographs the findings that we're coming up with and how they interact with different objectives and how various resources are managed. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Thank you so much, Chris. Okay, Sandra.
Hi everyone, bonjour. So I'm Sandra and I'm currently a postdoc at University of Waterloo. My background is in biogeochemistry and uh, fish ecology, invertebrate ecology, I would say. Um, and I'm currently working on the role of language in scientific knowledge production and dissemination. So I'm quite interdisciplinary. And as part of this work too, as I believe communication should be happening or ought to be happening in multiple languages, it may happen that I will speak French as well, as I know that SCAS is also bilingual. So my engagement with science communication has started several years ago. I would say, especially during the pandemic, because, you know, depending was what it was. And there were many opportunities for us to engage that way. It started with social media, with Twitter, and then just getting a few different opportunities to be present at different events. And this is something I really, really enjoy, and I feel is a responsibility for us as scientists. And I feel that using photography as a medium is especially, I would say, easy when we work on charismatic organisms or systems. So I find that it's a great way to get people to relate with the things I'm presenting, and then I can cater the kind of photos and what I show based on the audience that I have. So I would first say that I'm really no uh, photography expert, but for me, it's just really more of a way to capture beauty and the passion that I have for the natural environment and what I see. So that's what I would say in terms of my background.
Thank you. Okay, Lauren.
Hi, my name is Lauren Hayhurst, and I'm the fish research biologist at the IISD Experimental Lakes area. I've always been interested in capturing images in field settings, so initially at my family cabin and then throughout my cooperative education work terms, the first of which was conducting biological hotspot surveys of sea diving birds, marine mammals, and capelin from a longliner off the coast of Newfoundland, which was a far cry from my upbringing on the prairies. So now I bring my camera in my backpack daily, weather permitting, to document the active sampling efforts against a beautiful scenic backdrop or unusual encounters with aquatic organisms. And then my photos are shared and utilized in all manners of media, which help to communicate the science in an attractive and accessible format.
Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to the next question. So we've asked each panelist to prepare a slideshow with their award-winning photo, as well as 2 to 3 other images that they feel best sum up their photography style and interests. So we're gonna again open this up to all the panelists. We're gonna start with Sandra.
Oh, wow. Get the honor. Okay, so this is the photo that won the contest, and I named it Voguons ensemble. Voguer in French means to navigate, but also it elicits this notion of almost of a dance. And for context, this photo was actually taken as I was with Lauren Hayhurst here, and I know Lee is also here because that was during my time at ELA when I was sampling there. And for me, that really illustrates how it's not as much about a particular photography skill, but rather capturing the incredible beauty that nature offers us at different time points. And so, it was just this one morning, we went onto the lake and we just had this incredible scenery. And this double reflection here, almost to me, felt like it illustrated to me how everything is interconnected, sky and water, terrestrial environment and water. And this is kind of the approach that I use in the research that I do, looking at interconnections, but also I feel that almost kind of brought a melody to this moment. And so this idea of dancing on the water and moving on the water, and doing it together too, because the idea of doing things together is also important to me. Um, And I chose also, just to finish on that, I chose to keep the little piece of the boat here because it also shows that idea of movement and that, we're moving together and there's some sort of directionality with it. Now, choosing pictures for the rest of the slides was not easy, but I tried to kind of give a range of some of the features I like to pay attention to when I take photos. So one way for me to use photos is certainly to replace all the text that I may have on slides. Since the beginning, I've really been a big advocate for visuals rather than text whenever I do presentations, whether we be with the other scientists or non-specialists. And that's especially helpful when illustrating methods, even methods that would seem a bit boring and maybe sometimes don't make as much sense. And so this is a filtering apparatus that is in front of the Lake Erie backdrop. So this was one of the systems I've worked with. And I like this photo because we see a bit of the drops. So there's a bit of the idea of movement. Movement is something I like to capture too through photos, even if they tend to be static. And it also shows one of the most tedious aspects of my work in biogeochemistry, which is actually the filtering part. The catching the fish and vertebrates and doing the excretion experiments is the fun part. But the truth is, we spend hours and hours filtering. But even if it's a tedious activity, the backdrop also brings this element of beauty and serenity and kind of contrast with the challenges that this activity can bring. I, of course, also really enjoy capturing organisms in their habitat. And I especially chose that one because it also brings, again, this terrestrial and aquatic interface here. And I like colors too, and lights. I like to be able to capture light from different angles and how it shines through different parts of the natural environment. So this was done during our sampling time, excretion experiment time in the streams in Southern Ontario. And I like to capture organisms that I also don't work with because then that also brings this awareness to other different elements of the environment that surrounds me beyond just the organisms or the systems that I work with. And then lastly, I chose this one, which is my most recent one from fieldwork I've done in Lake Victoria in Kenya. And it's quite similar to the first photo I showed, but to me, that also illustrated this element of beauty that I tried to capture that almost goes into another medium of a form of visuals, which is painting. And so this really makes me feel like this is a painting. And again, it's capturing light at a different time of the day. And it also brings some elements of the research here. So, you not only have the lake, but you see also the water hyacinths there, which are invasive species in Lake Victoria. And again, there's that idea of movement. So generally, I would say that I like to use visuals that can elicit emotions too. And even if the photo itself may be static, it may, you know, bring these kind of emotions that may again allow people to relate with the context, the image, and the topic that we're discussing in that moment better. Um, just very last, I know we were only supposed to show 4 photos, but I just wanted to also say that I like to show people. And so we here have actually both Lauren and Lee, because, for me, research and science is absolutely a human endeavor in terms of, we need a whole community of people to do the work, but also it makes it more meaningful when we have these connections with people. And so here again, it illustrates some of the methods and put people, we see people in action, and we see that movement piece. And there's just something about the textures and the colors here that are just so crisp, and I really like how it comes out. Voilà.
That was great. Thanks so much, Sandra. Okay, Chris, we'll see yours next.
Okay. Okay, does everyone see this?
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. There we go.
Perfect.
Good. Okay. All right. This is the photo that won the award, and it is the harbor of Vancouver. And I took this when we were out doing some sampling in Burrard Inlet. And it really captivated me because of it essentially is a bit of a metaphor for the work that we were doing in the sense of developing a ocean health index for this inlet, which actually is a very large fjord that enters the mainland or the lower mainland of British Columbia over about 45, 46 kilometers or so. And at the ocean end of it is the city of Vancouver. But this day was interesting because of the storm clouds that were forming over top. There was light in the background, and then gray waters. And these were almost like indicators or pictures unto themselves of the work that we were doing, in the sense that the waters of Burrard Inlet are not in great shape. And that was kind of exemplified by the stormy clouds that were in the sky. But there was hope in terms of how the water quality could be improved over time, exemplified by the clearing of the sky in the background. But the gray of the waters also indicated to me that there was a lot of work to be done in terms of how the inlet itself, the fjord, and the city all interacting together were going to hopefully improve over time, but through a process of a lot of work. So the photo itself is a metaphor for the science that we were doing, and it's a visual expression of the different times that we might be experiencing as waters change around the harbor of Vancouver. Okay, so this next image is from a reservoir on Vancouver Island. It's called the Campbell Lake Reservoir. The project we're working on here was looking at food supplies for resident trout and how the water surface elevations and reservoir management actually played a role in terms of their survival and habitat attributes of the different trout populations. And as it turned out, these waters are so oligotrophic that the fish end up finding most of their food from the forest canopy and not from the reservoir itself, which has very low rates of productivity. And so this image essentially captured that belief or that feeling of the forest interacting very closely with the water, and the reflections presented this idea that the particles, the food supplies, the production on land was very much tied in with what goes on in the water. So I think it's a beautiful photograph simply from point of view of seeing this reflection, but it's that reflection that shows how the science is wrapped up into one image, and that expression is something that is quite beautiful, I think, in terms of how we interpret the data. Now, one of the things, of course, that we do is it's very interesting to deploy all these instruments that we do to capture the data sets that we're after. And most of the time, we look at these instruments as being something rather, well, awkward to use, perhaps. There's something of necessity that we have to engage in terms of operations to collect the information we're interested in. But sometimes they themselves present a very unique and artistic way of looking at the world. And this CTD, which is on a descent through a water column, is exactly showing this. It's a very beautiful piece of engineering, I think. And this image, along with the odd angles, which the water showed on the framing around the CTD, reflected kind of uh, the challenges of using this kinds of instrument, the odd bits of data that are surprising, but also just how cool it looks when you see one of these things descending through the water column. Okay, so I do have a couple more. Do I have time to show a couple more? Okay. All right. This is mid-February, Niagara Falls. And commonly you don't see this kind of image from Niagara Falls, but I had to throw this in here simply because it shows the mystery and the very unique and crazy looking ice formations that can happen in bodies of fresh water. And to see this one bird flying through all this puts it in a spatial scale that kind of makes the thing pop in terms of the awe of how powerful and mysterious these water bodies are. And that draws the viewer in to see to be curious, to find out, okay, what is this that is actually being shown here? What are the processes behind it that actually generate these kinds of formations? And that's so it's something that is mysterious but instills curiosity in the science behind it. Okay. I'm gonna show this as the last one. I really do enjoy aerial photography and have an opportunity to do that sometimes when we are doing flights for water sampling in very remote locations. And the advantage with this is you can really see the enormous colors that pop out in the forests of the north coast of British Columbia, the northwest coast. These are these colors, particularly in the fall, they provide this quality that brings your eye into the lake itself. It makes you question, okay, how is this lake actually functioning? And again, it's this clustering between the forest and the water and the dynamics between these two different parts of the ecosystem that are compelling and help to interpret what's going on here from an ecological point of view. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Lauren, let's see your pictures.
All right, how does that look?
Great.
So this was the photo that I was runner-up with. And so this is our clearest, most turquoise long-term ecological research lake. It's seasonally monitored. We set nets on the spawning shoals and we study large-bodied fish species, but also everything, including bycatch that makes their way into our trap nets. And the IISD experimental lakes area is comprised of 58 small lakes, and it's set on the landscape of Treaty 3. So this is the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe Nation and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We have small fish populations, and so we really have to put effort into capturing and having methods for sampling that are non-lethal. And we focus on returning fish to the lake alive and well. I took this photograph in September 2015 from the middle seat of a helicopter that was commissioned to remediate the shoreline in the transfer of the ELA from the federal government to the International Institute for Sustainable Development. However, this is my one and only opportunity to photograph lakes from a helicopter, so it doesn't really reflect my day-to-day, which actually looks more like this. So this is our every morning and afternoon on rotation across different experimental and reference lakes in the spring when we're looking at spawning white sucker, and in the fall when we're studying lake trout. My most common adjustment as a result is to straighten the horizon in post-processing. So while I am taking these photos, I have one hand on the tiller driving the boat, the other hand on my camera, trying to keep the boat off the net in the winds and waves, while field research assistants are working diligently to move fish into bins of lake water. And we're all being baptized by their splashes and occasionally gametes. I have approximately 100 images similar to this one, but this particular trap net check and capture occurred in 2020 when we were in peak COVID restrictions. So instead of having 60 people on site to do the lake sampling, we had 6 people to make it all happen. And so documenting this effort was really special because we achieved a whole other level of collaborative research where toxicology crew went to work on fish crew, went to work on lake sampling, and we're forever bonded in slime. I also wanted to provide this image of the kind of science to policy that I have the opportunity to paparazzi with other projects. So in this case, the Plastics Project in their inaugural transect edition of microplastics. So you can see the yellow and the pink in the photo are positively buoyant and neutral buoyancy, and then a big yellow boom to protect the outflow in the background. There's a lot going on in this photo as well, and while it won't be winning any awards for composition or clarity, I think it does a good job of communicating the scale of our efforts and the activity in the blur. So this photo was published in a magazine editorial relating the 3 R's of animal welfare to the 3 R's of waste management and concerning the problem, the macro problem of microplastics, but was more importantly clipped by Francis in the foreground and sent to his family in Africa. And so he had never been seen snow or been in a boat on a lake before, and now he's been involved in biweekly editions and sampling for this project over the past 2 years. And this year is their last year of whole lake editions, which have been made a reality by Desiree at the helm. So I am going to endeavor to capture their final microplastics edition as well. And while I predominantly take busy shots to encapsulate our busy work, I also enjoy the opportunistic captures, like this perfect calm of a misty morning when we were on our way to check the nets. This is arguably the broader context of what we are trying to achieve in our persistent monitoring and sampling, these pristine freshwater environments. So I wanted to end on this, as a former staff member selected this photo of all of the other pictures that he could have possibly been interested in their 30 years as his ultimate vista, and blew it up to a 4-foot by 6-foot and mounted it above their bathtub. So I think from being printed in a publication to being mounted in a bathroom, or from the bird's eye view to being in the heart of the action, I'm very happy to capture the science, tell the policy story, and have my photographs enjoyed in any form.
Thank you so much. All right, Kathryn.
We good?
Yeah.
So this is the photo that I submitted and was chosen in the contest. So these are rosy face shiners. So my style is, I think, somewhat different from the ones you just seen. I tend to really like close-ups of animals, basically. So I like the tight shots. I'm actually not a very good landscape photographer. I don't even have the right lens for that. I like to get as close as possible, showing the animals doing what they're doing. And my basic goal is to try and show people basically the diversity of the critters that we have. I really believe that people aren't going to care about something unless they see them. And so I really just want to show what we have, and if possible, show their behaviors as well. So show what they're doing that's interesting. And so this is one of my underwater shots where in May, in my waders, crouched over a likely looking spot where these fish were spawning, and just sat there until the fish acclimated to my presence, came back, and then I couldn't see what I was doing because my head was not in the water, so I was shooting sight unseen, hoping that I would get, one at least that had the right composition, had the fish in focus, wasn't too blurry kind of thing. And so this is my favorite shot because that single fish that's slightly separated from the school, and the head's actually in focus, was kind of the goal I was going for. And of course, this is a freshwater fish, and so when we see brightly colored fish, it's easy to think they're marine fish. They kind of get all the hype, and of course, they are usually more gaudy in color. But we have plenty of very colorful, pretty freshwater fish, and so I like to remind people that this is not anywhere fancy. It's like 10 minutes outside of Peterborough in a stream. I mean, it's not anything special. Like they can see these brightly colored fish. We have them in our backyards as well. Perhaps not quite rivaling marine fish, but I think pretty darn close in a lot of them. And the behavior here, which is not quite as obvious, is that these fish are in a school spawning, and so that's why they are all kind of gathered together here in their brighter colors and all swimming together, spawning over another fish's nest. So they don't even, of course, build their own nest. They're a nest associate that uses other fish's nests to spawn in. And so when I describe this, you get kind of that behavioral story on top of the actual close-up image of this, pretty freshwater fish. There we go. Another thing I like to do, again, fish are tricky to film underwater. We're not, so I'm in Ontario, so we're, it's not West Coast, it's not East Coast with their beautiful clear streams. Our streams are just full of sediment, like just always kind of thing. So it's really hard to get nice clear pictures underwater. And one thing, we're kind of fortunate to have, but also weirdly not in a way, is of course several species of salmonids that are not native, that are blocked or at least delayed on their upstream migration to spawn by dams. And so that creates the opportunity to actually see these fish leap out of the water trying to pass the dam. In most cases, there's a fishway, but they often don't know where the fishway is, of course, and so they guess wrong, basically. And so this salmon here is guessing wrong. The fishway is actually that darker patch in the back there. It's leaping towards the dam because, of course, you have flow coming off the dam, and the fish are also attracted to that. So taking pictures like this requires, figuring out where the fish are jumping, because you don't know when a fish is going to jump. You can't predict it. There's no like, I can see the fish trying to jump. It's just the fish moves kind of thing. And so my goal was to try and capture the moment of the fish. And of course, I like this because you have the water, so you can really see the fish is moving. And it's something that if you're there, you see it, but it's a second that goes by. And so by freezing that action, and then by zooming in, you can actually kind of see the actual fish itself, and you can see the eyes, and you can see the dorsal fin and the movement. And so to me, this represents, of course, again, like a really cool story. Why are these fish here to begin with? They're not a native fish, but also an amazing story of adaptation and wild reproduction. And then the human story of the fish is also trying to pass this man-made structure, and why is that structure there, and what does that mean for the health of our aquatic communities? So there's a whole lot going on in this one image that I like to talk about. So this one is an underwater shot. So this is a salamander larva. I don't know if it's a blue spotted or a spotted salamander, because I can't tell their larvae apart, and both breed in this pond. But again, trying to find new things to look at, I decided to try and to get pictures of their larvae. And this is again free swimming in a vernal pool. I wasn't doing anything to this little one, and they're very small. And they don't like having a camera shoved in their face. But this is another example of patience, sitting crouched, like I'm not in the water, I'm on land, trying not to move, trying not to scare them, and just taking a lot of pictures until I get one that's in focus with the right position, having its one leg out to the side there, of course, is kind of, not to anthropomorphize too much, but it looks cute. You can imagine, that this, with the big eyes and that kind of, droopy mouth, it's like with the gills, it look like hair standing up, right? You can make up a whole bunch of things, but again, to see something like this, very few people have gone out and see salamander larvae. And salamanders are nocturnal, few people have even seen a salamander. And so again, this is kind of showing that these guys are there. You know, you can talk about the importance of vernal pools, talk about how, you know, climate change, how landscape changes affect these amphibians. And so again, there's a whole bunch of stories that you can kind of weave into this one close-up picture of this one individual. The last one I chose is not a fish. I mean, I like taking pictures of fish with their own challenges. Also, it's a niche market. Not market's not the right word, but there are a lot fewer people doing fish than there are doing birds. There's a lot of people doing birds, so I still like it. It's a different challenge. I have the same kind of goals. I like showing close-ups. I like showing behavior. So this is a pair. One's just returned from foraging. They're obviously preening. It's late in the day, so you kind of have that nice low light on them, and so they're not blown out kind of thing with highlights. And it's the same type of idea, but just kind of different critters. But all of these, you know, for what I want to achieve, which is showing these animals doing something to people that might not see them, usually take a lot of time to figure out what the animal is doing so that I can then capture that with my camera. So I do a lot of videos as well, but that's a whole other discussion to try and get good videos of behavior. So those are the 4 pictures I chose.
Thank you so much to everyone for sharing their photos and telling us about your connection to them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to ask a series of questions, each one to 2 panelists at a time, so we get sort of a diversity of responses. And so the first one is, there are a lot of platforms and formats available for science communication. Why do you think photography is a valuable tool? So we're going to go right back to Kathryn.
I mean, the short answer for me is that we're a visual species. And so anything that we can show in images is going to have much more impact and be understood, I think, better and faster than anything you show in text. And that applies to photos, it applies to diagrams, it applies to figures, it applies to basically anything that you're converting from you know, a text or a word-based description into an image. It's a picture, it's worth 1,000 words. And that's just, it's true. It's just how our brains are kind of wired. And so, of course, you know, video as well, anything that, you know, shows what you're trying to describe, we just understand it better. And so any of the platforms that allow you to use anything visual, I think have a leg up over anything that's kind of strictly text-based. And so I think that's the main thing about photography, is that it you know, hones in on basically what our brains do anyway, and we interpret pictures way better and easier than text.
Thanks, Kathryn. Sandra?
To build off what Kathryn said, I actually also do videography, and I do enjoy that medium, but I like that photos are actually static, and I feel that gives us an opportunity to be more attentive to details, play more with things like light and textures and colors, and actually spend time to, as we would say in French, s'imprégner of the moment. So you just really spend time to feel it and look at the details and understand what's going on in the photo. I think for me also, sort of similar to Kathryn in the sense that, you know, I like to show things that maybe not many people look at, but also show it from my perspective. So as, you know, a racialized woman there's not a lot of us in North America as much in our field. I think it's important for me, especially as I grew up on the African continent, to, for example, show pictures of different natural spaces on this continent from my own perspective, not just from perhaps the photos that are often seen made by, you know, foreigners. So I think it's also a question of perspectives and showing things that you know, bringing just a diverse, different outlook to different spaces in the world.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, your next question is, what do you look for when capturing a photo that you plan to use for public communication? So we'll go to Lauren next.
Thanks. So the majority of my shots are opportunistic and candid captures of fieldwork. So they're portraying non-lethal capturing method or a sampling technique against a particularly striking backdrop, I maintain that it's hard to take a bad photo in the boreal shield. But we do take care to make sure that the photographs that we're sharing of the research are captioned accurately. It's easy to misconstrue things, especially in an experimental context where a concentration of jack pine pollen on the surface of the water might look like an active algae bloom. So even the idea that even pristine systems have parasites, our reference lake fishes will exhibit naturally occurring infections. So we will choose to document those as anomalies, but we probably won't be advertising them as they don't represent the vast majority of our field observations.
That's great. Thanks. Kathryn, you want to share your perspective?
Yeah, with this question, like basically AI just kept coming into my mind. And so my biggest thing is I want to show reality as it is. In a world where so much is altered, changed, and not just through AI, of course, we have so many, Photoshop type tools where you can delete things from images, you can add things to images. So for me, the biggest thing is to show reality as it is. And then show it the way I want. I show it in the way that I want to communicate what I'm trying to communicate. And so an image that's unique, an image that has the right composition so that people will focus on, what I want them to focus on. And so it's again, it's showing reality as it is. But also, of course, I have a goal and what I want people to get out of that. But I think the biggest thing is, not manipulating. And even when I'm taking pictures, I don't want to change the landscape to make the picture look different. Like if that branch is there, the branch is going to be there kind of thing. I think that's kind of part of the ethics of photography as well.
Thanks.
Okay, our next question is, do you approach photography differently when your target audience is the public versus other scientists? How do you think photography can help make science more accessible to communities outside of academia or professional sectors of the aquatic sciences? We'll start with you, Chris.
Sure. Okay. I do not distinguish between the different audiences in the images that I might be showing. And the reason for that is we're all people. We all visualize things in ways that are unique to us as individuals. And it doesn't really matter whether we're technically astute or we're looking at things that are completely out of our field of understanding, but a picture will display an understanding, whether you're an advanced scientist or someone who doesn't know anything about water science. And so that image instills a curiosity. And it's a curiosity that then leads to a question or series of questions that might be asked about what is it? What are we looking at here that is that captures our attention and our curiosity? So that then leads to questions, regardless of who you are, as to what do we do? Like, who are the people that are actually capturing these images? And what's their background? How did you get interested in this kind of thing? And that, so you end up kind of moving down a bit of a tunnel, but the tunnel opens up to this realm of curiosity and understanding. And it's all based on the visual cues, the cues that pull you into the image and develop an understanding, even though you don't know anything about the science behind it. So I think that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of the importance of the images, and the audience really doesn't matter.
Sure, thank you. What are your thoughts, Lauren?
Yeah, I agree with what Chris said. And further to that, I incorporate landscape shots as backgrounds in science conference presentations, just as they're displayed to the public on social media. I think like the visual depictions can be presented to researchers and to the public, either in reports or in commentaries. I think photos can speak volumes and reach broader audiences on a range of topics, and they're definitely more approachable and accessible than peer-reviewed publications. They do a great job of providing the why should we care, which can then be followed up with the research and the numbers for those who are interested in the science behind the image. And I know that we're encouraged by our Treaty 3 collaborators to share the story behind the science, and so a photo is often a great place to start with that.
Those are great points. Thanks so much. The next question is, are there any challenges that you've faced engaging in photography in aquatic environments? And if so, how did you overcome them? We'll start with Sandra.
So the one challenge I would mention is, like I was discussing earlier, I also really enjoy showcasing people as part of my photography, and whether it be people within these aquatic environments as actual like researchers or scientists, or people who live and rely and interact with that environment, and who may not be specialists. And sometimes the opportunistic approach would be to capture a scene that may be really unique. But the thing is with capturing people is that, they may not be okay and comfortable with being in your picture. And so I think I've just come to understand that, well, if I can, I will ask the person for their consent to take a picture of them. Sometimes it may remove then that spontaneity of the moment, especially if it was a shot that was supposed to be far away. But sometimes also it's just accepting that you may just not get that shot, and that's okay. And that's part of, I think, the ethical and just approach of doing things, especially in a context that, again, for a long time, for example, in many countries in the global south, there's been representations from perhaps a Western lens that may not have also taken into account the consent of the people there. And so I try to be really mindful of that, that even if I want to showcase things, I also want to do it in an appropriate and ethical way.
Sure. Thank you. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, one of the things that I found challenging is that most of my photographs are not planned. They are something that happens on the spur of the moment. I have camera gear with me. We're engaged in a certain tasks in the field, and all of a sudden an image pops up that I really want to capture. And if your camera's not ready, if it's sitting in the pack somewhere, and you have to change a lens or something like this, is sometimes you lose the shot. And as Sandra was saying, that's okay if you lose the shot, but the challenge is that my eye will find something, it'll be captivated by something, but I'm actually engaged in filtering a water sample, and so I'll miss it. So that's one of the challenges of actually doing this stuff. Is photography is not the main purpose of being there. It's often secondary. And so it's challenging to capture the images that you want based on the circumstances in which you're working. So the other thing is I'll tend to carry several different lenses and camera gear. And that's awkward to be able to pack into all of your spaces that you physically have, either on a boat or a helicopter or whatever. And so I always find ways to do that, but others will look at me and say, "Why are you bringing all that stuff?" And sometimes they'll realize after the fact that, oh, well, we did get some pretty cool photos from doing that. So the challenge, I think, is that photography in most of the groups of people that I'm working with is considered secondary and not primary. And I guess that's the way it should be, given the work that we're trying to do. But it'd be really nice sometimes to shift it around the other way. But anyway, just a couple of thoughts.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. Okay, our next question is, have you used photography to help with conservation messaging or policy outreach? And if so, can you share the results? So we'll go to Lauren first.
Yeah, definitely. In my own graduate research, we compiled the science into policy briefs, complete with photographs of the site and point source editions, as well as by photographing whole lake project efforts that Fish Crew supports, that have been used in science and policy communications as well. And so I think these images help provide an explanation, especially when we're using words like contaminants and experiments and manipulations. We know aquatic ecosystems are being contaminated all over the world, but we are purposely polluting one more lake at environmentally relevant concentrations to quantify the impacts and fate. So, considering our whole lake research and recommendations across all levels to policymakers, I think that the photographs highlight the humanity and nature of our science and help convince decision makers that they need to enact change. Before my time, but certainly the best example of this and integral to the history of whole lake studies is that infamous photo of curtained Lake 226 with the dark blue water on one side and the bright green algae bloom on the other, from the phosphorus edition. So, a good example.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. Chris?
Yeah, that is a great picture, by the way. That photograph is iconic, and I totally agree with how that one picture can summarize an entire concept and so many papers all in one image. In terms of policy that I might be involved in, is the biggest issue is that many people who are involved in setting policy are rarely getting into the field to actually see what these places look like. And they might be reading many technical papers, policy documents, uh, legal jargon, and rarely, I shouldn't say rarely, but often, the idea of a process that we're trying to communicate is difficult to get through in simply words. And an actual image of the process is something that is more easily conveyed. And that goes a long way in terms of developing confidence that a policy decision is the correct one. And so I will often start a document that is going to be contributing to some policy with a photograph. It'll be right on the front cover. And that one image, it essentially conveys the entire concept of what we're trying to express through a larger document. So I think it's really valuable from that point of view. It simply bridges the gap between what is actually true from a science point of view and what is understood and makes it through the policy decision-making process. It's amazing how a single photograph can do that.
Thanks so much, Chris. Okay, so before we toss it over to audience questions, I'll ask one more. So do you have any advice for individuals who would like to start developing their photography skills? Or, what's a simple way a scientist could start integrating photography into their research or science communication or professional work? So we'll go to Sandra.
So I would say make time and space for it. I know that especially when we're leading our own field work or any like even lab work, we're really stressed and preoccupied by the actual doing things. But it's good also to be able to step back. One, because I mean, that is one of the reasons we're probably doing this work is because we actually do enjoy that work and being in that space. And so take a step back to pay attention to the little details, notice beauty, and take as many pictures as possible, actually. Don't lose a moment because you may actually end up repurposing these photos in all sorts of different contexts that you may not have intentionally thought about. So the more the merrier, and don't get too bogged down by the perfection of a photo. And then the second one is, be open to engaging more in that creative side of you in terms of even using these photos in different contexts, whether it be in scientific presentations, or even, for example, when I make posters, I like to use as the background a photo that can represent maybe the system that I'm working on, even beyond just actual photos. And so that's also a way to reuse photos that you may not, because we have thousands of photos, we cannot use all of them, but that's a way to reuse photos. And then you can take presentation workshops, things like that, that can allow you to hone your skills and really work maybe more on that refining your eye for aesthetics and these kind of things.
Thanks for that advice, Sandra. Okay, Kathryn?
Yeah, so similar to Sandra, I mean, the biggest thing is really get out there and practice. Whatever gear you have, it doesn't matter. You can do amazing things with a cell phone. Just get out there and try it, use it. You want to figure out the settings. So, I mean, auto is great, but that's only going to get you so far. So if you want to develop your skills, figure out what you have control over, try manual modes, and start experimenting. There's lots of great resources, YouTube as well. I mean, there's probably like a billion different videos on how to use whatever equipment you have. And so that's, great to help you understand, things like exposure, shutter speed, all that, the fun stuff. But then really, you got to get out there and do it. And that gives you the confidence to then start trying new things. And so one of the things you can also do is, as you're looking at social media, as you're looking at other people who have communicated with images, which are the ones that make you stop and which are the ones that you want to scroll past. So you want to figure out, both in general and for your own style, what works for you. What is it about the images that captures your attention? What is the information there? What is the composition there? And then you can start using that to then try and, not copy it, obviously, but try and see if you can achieve the same types of things in your own work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of your thoughtfulness and your answers. I think I really got a lot out of that. So now we're going to open it up to audience members. If there's any questions from those here today, you can again either raise your hand with the little hand function, or feel free to type your question into the chat if you'd like us to read it out for you.
People are being shy. So Brad and I had, some extra questions that we didn't fit in. So maybe we could ask one of those, and if any of the panelists want to respond, you can jump in. So what's your approach to capturing candid moments in the field without disrupting wildlife or research activities?
I mean, I can go, at least for the wildlife. So I mean, right now I'm not so much in with people doing research. I go out for the express purpose of photographing wildlife. So I mean, the biggest thing is to really understand what you're trying to photograph, understand their behavior. Most wildlife photographers spend a lot of time actually figuring out what and where and how their critter is doing whatever it is that you want to capture, and then figuring out within their level of comfort, where can you kind of set up for what you want to achieve. And then always be paying attention. And if you can see that you're causing the animal to change its behavior, I mean, and that's, more than just, distress, but if it's looking at you, if like the owl has its eyes open with the ear tufts up kind of thing, I mean, you're obviously too close, and you, I think, need to be willing to back off and not be stressing the animal to get the shot. And so again, mostly it requires a lot of time. I mean, there's luck as well, of course, but it's time, it's patience, it's doing the research, but in the sense of like the field research of figuring out where the animals are doing what they're doing. And sometimes for some situations, it's spending a lot of time so the animal actually gets used to you, so you can actually get a little bit closer, which you can do with some animals. It really depends on the species. But for me, honestly, like the biggest thing is you're not going to get any pictures if you're not out there. So it's putting the time in to be out there which increases your chance that you're going to get either lucky or, have your patients pay off in the end.
For me, it's more about having the camera ready, because I was saying earlier that a lot of my photos are not planned ahead, but happen because certain conditions actually appear. And for me, it's more about changes in light. So when a light changes, the color changes, shapes change, and if your camera's not ready, you can miss these really, really beautiful moments. And so it's about organizing your camera so that when you're doing other things, but your camera's already there, it's ready to go, it becomes part of you, so that you don't actually have to worry about, oh my gosh, where is this thing? I've got to get this image. But it's just right there, and you're able to capture it. And when that happens, which is pretty rare, but when it happens, it's just a wonderful feeling.
Go ahead, Tanya.
Thank you all for that. That was a great presentations. I love all your photos. I think it was maybe Kathryn that mentioned publishing some books in relation to the photos. I was just curious because I was hoping to try and make a kid's book with some of the field work that I'm doing, and I wanted to know if you have anything else that you wanted to share about that whole experience and process.
Yeah, so I said I did 3 books. So 2 of them I decided to publish through Amazon. The advantages, of course, is that you don't have to worry about, finding a publisher or anything like that. All you have to do is make your book, have it follow their format, of course. So one of the limitations is that you don't have unlimited freedom in how you want your book set up and the sizes of the books. But if what you want to do fits within their formats, it's a relatively easy process. And then again, you don't need a website or anything like that. You're on Amazon. People just go in, say, buy your book, and Amazon does it all, and you get your little deposit of however much it is. The more, picture heavy and better quality books, of course, will cost more and possibly net you more in the end. So, whatever margin, I don't go into this for money, but it's the Amazon route is, again, relatively easy. My other book was more of a kind of coffee table, so a larger book with 100 odd pages of all photos. And so it was in a format and size that wasn't conducive to being done through Amazon. So I did find, after spending a lot of time figuring out, I found a publisher where it's not cheap, but cheap enough that I could still charge a reasonable price and people would still be willing to pay it. So I can talk about that company. But it meant I had to design it all myself and have it basically all ready to go. So I had to learn how to use Adobe InDesign, which is its own learning curve. Make sure everything was correct because it's all on me. All they do is print it, right? Everything else is on me to give them the finished product. And then you have to have, of course, your own website to be able to, or some other way to be able to then sell your book, right? So all they do is I log in and I say, I want to print a copy of this book and send it to this person, and then you pay for it. So you have to look after everything else. There is the third way, which I didn't do, which is actually having a publisher do it all for you. I just haven't, decided not to go down that route. That has, another whole set of, constraints and advantages to doing it that way too. So I've done 2 different types of self-publishing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we have another hand up, Anne.
Hi, thanks so much for the presentation. It was really great to see all those photos. I just actually thought that this would be a good venue just to say that we are doing the photo contest again. So I'm part of the SCAS communications team. So I just wanted to say that I wasn't sure, Christine, if you were going to get to that as well, or
Yep. At the end, I was going to let you, but you can just do Now's a great time.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, so anyways, I'm sure Christine can speak more to this as well, but just keep an eye on the social media, and the website will be taking submissions for the next photo contest as well.
Thanks for sharing. Okay. So I think we can go to our final quick question for all our participants. So I'll let Brad read that.
Sure. So for this one, we are just going to have you answer with a single sentence. Each of the contestants will answer. We want to know, what is one positive outcome that you've experienced because you've engaged in photography?
Lauren?
Art aside, field photography captures the moment in a way that it can be used to keep records and support field notes by providing evidence of the activity or occasion or site details. So it's another memory tool and metadata format that I've learned to rely on when all the field seasons start blending together.
That's great. Sandra?
Oof. I second what Lauren said, but I would also say maybe moments I've really enjoyed is eliciting humor, laughter when I share some photos. I like to capture moments that again show tedious work, but also in a funny way. And so I like when people laugh when I show these photos of field work.
That's nice. Chris?
Yeah, I think a phrase or a sentence might be that when I see a smile on an audience faces from viewing an image of conveying a scientific concept, it makes me believe that presentation and the ideas that were being presented actually work.
That's great. Thanks. Kathryn?
So there's the selfish answer. I do it because it's my happy place. Like the stresses of the world melt away when I just sit there and have the privilege to watch an animal and try and capture that. And then when I show people that, to have somebody say, I had no idea, or that's so cool, that I've shared something that about the world they didn't know about, that I mean, maybe also selfishly also makes me happy.
That's great. Okay, so on behalf of myself, Brad, the webinar committee, the communications committee at SCAS, thanks to everyone who joined us today. Please keep an eye on our social media and the website for more announcements related to the next photo contest, but also for more webinars. We're really happy to offer these webinars for free. We want to encourage people who are attending them and enjoying them to consider a membership in the society if you haven't yet, and join our community more formally. So you can find all those details on our website as well. But finally, I want to say thanks most importantly to our panelists for offering some really valuable perspectives and insight into their experiences. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks again for being here.